Tell you later.
All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order for the Board of Water and Wastewater Commissioners, the town of Harwich, being held at the Harwich Water Department at 196 Chatham Road, Harwich, Mass. Thursday, May 26, 2022 at 11 a.m. We have the full board today, and Dan, our superintendent, is on the phone call. So let's go call to order. Executive session, nothing. Public comments, announcements. Nothing for the consent agenda, and we have abatements for 8 Sherwood Road. Dan, are you up to speed on what's going on at 8 Sherwood?
I am not super familiar. I was just looking at it before the meeting.
So it looks like the house at 8 Sherwood had a water service was damaged. You guys had the time to read the notice here. Dave was on his way by going home, and he noticed it. He called it in. We had a crew get out there quite quickly to get it settled and get it repaired. But there was a comment made about it being a new road and having some issues with the ground settling. What's your take on that, Dan?
Actually, you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, I mean, if the leak was in the driveway, then it was before the meter, so that shouldn't have been registering. I guess the meter read shouldn't reflect any lost water during the break because it occurred during the meter.
Right. I believe this is a charge. This is a charge for the repair.
Oh, okay.
$592.64. It's not a payment for the water loss, but for the repair of the service. Did you get this notice? I can read it to you.
There's a leak at the curb stop.
Yeah, no, I have. Yeah, I read the email before the meeting, and that's what I was just. I was confused on the charge, but honestly, I wouldn't want to suggest one way or another without driving by and seeing where the service was, because if, I mean, the repair had to be made because the service was broken. Was it
right.
The town's project that drove over the service or, impacted the service, or was it the private contractor that he hired to install his sewer service that damaged the water service? You know what I mean?
Right. Noreen.
Dan, we have this scenario described, per the homeowner, from what he may have heard from water department workers, and, people always hear things differently and stuff like that. So it would be nice to hear from the water department people who were there rather than, I don't like to just listen to, one side's view of the words. But also on that note, what the homeowner says is that the leak was explained to me as, quote, and he's not saying that's a direct quote, but settling from our newly paved road sewer put downward pressure on our line, which pulled at the shut-off valve leading to failure. So I guess my questions would be, I would rather hold till you get more direct input from yourself and any water department people that would be needed. But also, I'd be curious for the future, if in fact this is a situation that can happen, then why, if it's got to do with the paving, why are we hearing about it in relation to the sewer as opposed to any time roads are paved? That's part of the thing I don't understand.
Yeah, I guess I'll have to talk to whoever responded and made the repair, because I'm just thinking, if the sewer main was installed during, across the street, and when they backfilled, there could be settling in the trench that could pull the service tube back as the road settles. So I don't know if this was just a product of the service tube coming out of the corporation stop, or if it was some other failure. So if I can talk to the tech that responded and the guys that dug it up, I may be able to get a little bit more information, because it's not impossible that the road could have settled and pulled it out. and that wouldn't occur during a traditional road resurfacing, because they wouldn't have made that deep cut in the middle.
Ah, okay, that's the
Say,
difference.
it says in the article, Dave Nicholson was there, and he's the one that noticed the shut-off valve leaking by the street as he drove by. So it definitely, I don't say this is a homeowner's problem. I say it is it's part of the work going on, the sewer work, and more of a problem with the work that's been done there. So things have been disturbed, and obviously I don't see it as a homeowner problem. I see it as a problem for the town side.
I mean, I spoke to Dave because I saw his name here, and he was not, he was going home, he saw it, he called it in, he wasn't there doing the work, or he didn't stick around because he had other things to do, but he did call it in, and he's not sure even who responded to the site. So I'd feel better if we tabled this until, Dan, you could get a hold of whoever did go out and get a first-hand opinion as to what they saw and what it looked like before we take action on this, in my opinion.
Yep.
Do we have to move that? No?
Or we can,
Table it?
Postponed.
you know, make a motion to table this?
Sure.
All right.
I'll move that we table the request for abatement on 8 Sherwood Road till next available time.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. All right, Dan, next up is the Chatham Road land taking.
Yeah, so I included in the packet material a memo that just trying to highlight kind of the next steps and how we finalize this this process. So we've done pretty much all of the legwork leading up to submitting the legal ad. So I propose a couple of dates. We can either look at those now or later if we want to schedule. But that's pretty much where we're at the point. Since I wrote that memo and sent it out for the packet yesterday, I was sent from the Cape Cod Commission the draft memorandum agreement for transferring the funds from the county to the town and then returning after escrow. So I just need to get that off to legal counsel just to have them give it their blessing, and I think we are good to go.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we move ahead on this. I would like to see this happen. So to do whatever we need to do to keep it going.
So what dates are we looking at? You want to do it 6/16 or 6/23, Dan?
It doesn't matter to me. I just figured I'd throw a couple dates out there just in case there were scheduling
Yep.
issues with anyone else.
All right, Noreen?
I'll waive the whole week of the 20th. I mean, you could always have one less person, just letting you know that.
Oh, in June?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we're looking at, 16, 23. Okay, well, let's, does the 16th work for everybody?
You know what? Actually, never mind. Yeah, no, that'll be good. Sorry.
So that'd be that'd be 3 weeks out. Is that good, Dan?
Yeah, that works for me. Just that hits our 14-day posting
Yep.
notice.
And what time? 11, we stick with 11 o'clock?
That works for me.
Noreen?
It's just a tiny typo, Dan, and I'm sure somebody would catch it, but just in case. On the legal ad, it's just a draft, but it does say on the, where it says where the meeting is scheduled, draft, it says 2021. So,
Oh, yep, yep.
just to be
I gotta have
careful.
to,
All right,
yeah, I gotta plug that in once.
right, that's what I figured, but you wouldn't want to lose a meeting over a
I know, lose land.
draft
land
notice. Yeah,
acquisition.
exactly.
All right. So, all right, that's good. So, 26, 6/16.
26. 6/16. 6:16, right?
right? Yeah, 6:16.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. 2022 water restrictions. This got a little confusing, from what I hear.
Yeah, so we had a couple people reach out, a couple landscape contractors, just, you know, they're actually all super nice, had great conversations with all of them. And what one of them had brought up that I thought was a reasonable request and wanted to bring to the board was he had a couple clients that have ultimately too many zones to water between the 4 and 8 a.m. and 5 to 9 p.m. window. He informed me that, you know, watering in the afternoon ultimately really is the worst thing you can do for a lawn. It promotes mold growth, fungus, and now you're putting down more chemicals and things of that nature. So he was seeing if there was an opportunity for the board to amend the AM watering hours to do midnight to 8 a.m. That way he could actually water within that window for those larger properties that he has.
All right, that's fine with me. There was also some thought as to putting a weekend day in, like I don't know, Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday, or Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, or something.
I guess my only thought on that would be just, where we've already rolled out Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I would want to at least keep those 3 so that people aren't having to, you know, go back for a second or third time as a irrigation contractor.
Right.
That's one of my concerns, is that, you know, if we switch it up a couple weeks in, anyone who did hire their irrigation contractor to adhere to the restrictions would now have to have them come back, which
Right.
could be an added expense.
Okay. Anything else?
I just added the complaints on the weekend, that's what
Yeah.
it was.
All right, so midnight to 8 a.m., Dan?
That was the request of that one particular individual.
So don't the people have to go back and set the times?
Yeah, this was, the request made by this one individual was for a couple of, I guess, not normal conditions where they have like 10 plus 18 zones that, you know, the property's just too big to get done. I don't know that, you know, the typical homeowner is going to need that midnight window.
Yeah.
I suppose. I mean, it's, you know, 6 half dozen.
Yeah. All right, what's the board's feelings, Doreen?
Well, like how many landscapers have you been working with that would know this and already have reacted to it, Dan?
I think we had 4 or 5 reach out.
A lot.
So, can I, just for clarification, so these are not censored to this extent that they can just do it from their office? Like, they have
No.
to physically go, maybe it's time the landscapers put something on there? Given that these water restrictions are probably gonna continue forward in the years ahead,
You know, it's, thing is,
and they don't have enough labor as it is, sorry.
I'm sorry. A lot of people do their own, so they don't need a landscaper anyway, whether it's from their office or their house or anything, so it hadn't occurred to me that many people don't bother to learn how to program their own controllers.
Is it like programming a heat, thermometer in your house?
Yeah,
A little more,
just
but
like,
yeah.
yeah.
You know, you have
You know,
drones.
one of the landscapers had said we'd been to, you know, I think 20 plus accounts that he'd set up. I think that was between Harwich and Dennis that he'd already done.
See,
But just as a kind of scale, order of magnitude.
like in my case, I would just go down cellar and change it.
Yeah.
But apparently, a lot of people don't do that, so they call their landscaper to come do it.
So my point is, Dan, about changing the day, we're gonna change the time, so don't these people have to have their landscapers come back to change the time? Or are they capable of doing the time themselves?
Well, I guess I mean, if you want, I guess my thought is, well, because we're opening the morning window,
Yeah.
technically no one has to do anything.
Okay,
but I guess the same could be said if you're gonna add a day as well.
All
But
right.
I'm just thinking if you add a day, people might think like, oh, well, now I want to water for another day, I'm gonna, I don't know how it would be perceived, I guess. Maybe.
Well, I really don't want to add a day, I want to stick to the 3 days. So,
Yeah.
I don't really want to add a day, and I'm not, that how about, the 3 days as it is, so, no,
About changing it for the time, that would only have to be for those 2 places that are having trouble that he talked about. If mine's going on at 4, and you tell me it can come on at midnight, I'm not gonna change anything.
Right.
It's still just gonna come on at 4, but I have to say, I agree with you. I'd rather not add a 4th day,
Yeah.
because to me, that seems kinda like normal watering,
right.
Yeah.
even 3 days seems like a lot right
It
now,
does.
so. But like we
It
said,
gets to, enforcement too.
right,
Right,
I mean, we're doing the 3 days right now in the beginning, for like Dan said, people putting in lawns and stuff like that, to get the watering in, but we may have to go down to 2 days come midsummer or towards the end of the summer, so that's just another option. All right, so we'll just leave it the way it is for now and do the midnight to 8 watering, Dan? Is that what you want to do?
Yeah, I mean, that's, I think ultimately it's gonna get a lot more spelt out once our permit comes in, because
Right.
we're gonna have pretty hard and fast triggers for what needs to be done when.
Right.
But I think this would at least help, the few people that have called so far.
Dan?
Noreen?
How would is there some way we can contact the radio stations at least that were giving out the wrong info?
Yeah.
That would be
Yeah,
at least
I was-
resource.
yeah, and I was kinda hesitant to reach out in advance of this meeting, because I
Right.
didn't wanna reach out and say, hey, you reported it wrong initially, and then, hey, we changed it a week later, so I was trying to wait till we got through this meeting, and then we were gonna do the big PR, reach out.
Dan, did you get that electric sign fixed up at the corner there, 39 and
Kevin
137?
said he was doing it on Tuesday.
All right, I haven't been up there by it, so I was just wondering.
He had texted me on Monday night, said he was gonna fix it,
Okay.
on Tuesday.
All right. Okay, so anything else for water restrictions? Noreen?
Do you think we need somebody to go in front of public comment and mention it again for the next couple of weeks, or Dan?
I wouldn't hurt.
Is that a volunteer, Noreen?
You gotta go anyway, so you might as well have
I
it.
don't go.
Oh, you don't?
No,
Oh, I got you.
I watch on, I'm part of the TV audience.
Oh,
I'll go if you want.
I
you
can
could
go
go.
Monday.
Huh? It's
All right.
Tuesday
Or-
for the
Oh, because
holiday.
of the holiday. This Tuesday I can't. I don't think.
If they're doing a Zoom thing, I can, jump in too.
That'd be good.
All right, if you're gonna jump in, I won't go, but the following week I'll go if you want.
Tuesday I'm off Cape.
They have Zoom where you can call in, Dan?
At the meeting I was at this past Monday, at the Selectmen's meeting, they still had, a go-to meeting option. A couple of the
Okay.
people that were speaking on Code Book were
All right.
tuned in, so.
I could go the following Monday.
Okay.
I just can't go this Tuesday.
Just let us know if you are able to do that or not on that Tuesday.
Tuesday, dear, yeah. At least that way maybe we'll get more feedback too,
Well, Erica was going to do a sales pitch for, the connection, the insurance connection. You'd like to do that commercial. They try to sell the connection insurance?
Oh, yeah.
Service type.
Service type, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, are we good for,
Do we have to vote to amend the midnight time?
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion that we amend the water restrictions set last meeting, so that the start time on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday will be moved to midnight from 4 a.m.
midnight to 8 a.m.?
Midnight to 8 a.m.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Second, all in favor? All right, thank you. All right, Dan, next is water rates.
Yeah, so I included in the packet, the rate and fee schedule that we discussed, a couple meetings ago. And I just wanted to kind of rehash the topic as we're fastly approaching June and July, and I think it's been our typical practice to try to make sure that we adopt water restrictions before the next, fiscal year starts.
Yes.
So I just wanted to see at least one for the water rates, if everyone was on board and we wanted to look to schedule the rate hearing for the 5% increase. And then beyond that, if we wanted to also at the same time consider the amendments to the service fees or system development fees, or we can do it in two parts, just to try to have a conversation about it.
Well, I'd rather do, have one meeting held for the water and sewer rates and fees, just to have it all done at one time. So we'll have it ready for the fiscal year, 23.
Yeah, I agree.
And then I guess beyond that, my memory isn't serving me well at the moment, but I don't recall how deeply we got into some of the others, like the system development fees and things that were on the second page there. So just before we move to consider scheduling that, I wanted to make sure everyone had an opportunity to flesh it out.
You're talking about the water service, water main extensions and fire services?
Yeah.
Yeah, system development, yeah, we have it all there. Yeah, I prefer just have one meeting, you have one meeting for all of them.
And are we still, is everyone on board with the proposed rate and fee schedules?
Noreen?
So, back to the water rates, it sounded like we were all pretty much, obviously, in agreement about the 5% planned anyway, so I would think that would be fine. We talked a little bit about future years, but that wouldn't be part of this hearing. So, I guess, just want to make sure I'm reading page 2 correctly. It sounds pretty much, so these would be new water services, like I built a new home or I'm extending it, and it sounds like it's mostly going to quotes rather than a set fee. Is that pretty much true?
Yeah, well, so it's going to be a quote ultimately a quote for labor and materials, and then in addition to the labor and materials, there's the system development fee that gets applied for a new service based on the diameter feeding the property. So if you were going to build, a single-family residential home, one of us would come out and give you a quote. Say the labor and materials were $2,000 for round numbers, and you were going to have a 1-inch tap. You would pay the $2,000 labor and materials. You would pay a $500 system development tap fee, and then a $50 water service application. Now, if you are a big developer and you're looking to put in, a 10-lot subdivision, and you're going to require an 8-inch water main to feed that development, you would be submitting a water main extension application. So there'd be a $50 application fee, and then for your 8-inch water main, you would pay a system development fee of $4,000. And then for the individual properties, so this is really to start to, bring in revenue to support the ongoing efforts like well development and things of that nature.
Okay. Oh, I see, the taps are below the different taps. Okay.
Dan, I just want to ask a question because I know someone will ask me. Like, for example, the 6-inch tap, the $600 is crossed out and it's $3,000. Is that like a general increase, or are these numbers like 20 years old, or why are those numbers so different?
Yeah, so
they're very old? Okay. Like from 1940 or something?
No, not that.
Not that old, but like
20 years.
the 70s or 80s? Okay.
It needs to be changed.
No, it's just, I want to make sure that they
Significant
weren't
change.
from like 3 years ago and somebody has a heart attack. That
No, we
if
just haven't-
they don't build their house now,
No, these haven't
3
been done.
years from now, it's going to be triple. Do you know what I mean? That's all.
Yeah, what were you saying, Dan?
Yeah, if you, and on the following page, there's that, horizontal Excel sheet that has, you know, a survey of, the wells that we put together, surrounding communities, and some of their fees for the same thing.
Now, say if you did an 8-inch tap, that $4,000, that does, and you're putting 6 houses off that 8-inch.
Yeah.
You'd still have to get, each individual house would have to apply too, right?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
For the 4,000? Or?
No,
No, that-
500.
Just the
per
tap,
house.
right, okay, yeah,
Tap fee.
yeah.
Yeah, it's,
All right, so Dan, timeframe,
Well, if we're gonna go for a public hearing, and I can't look around to see if anyone's gonna give me, eyes about this, but if we're gonna go for the land taking on the 16th, and we're gonna have to hold a public,
hearing,
yeah, we
I-
could
I agree.
combine it and do two.
Yep. I agree. How's the
I
board
don't know if
feeling?
anyone in the room has any other suggestions, but
I think that's a great idea.
It just kind of makes sense to have it all done at one time. All right. I'm just wondering if we should have that 16th meeting at Town Hall in the Griffin Room, or if we should have it here. Because I don't know how many people might show up to that.
if you want me to investigate, I can reach out and see if it's available.
All right. It might be, people might show up to this, I mean,
Yeah,
Right.
I think that
you know, I
makes
think it
sense.
gives them the opportunity to come and be heard at least. You wanna try that, Dan?
Yeah.
All
I can
right,
reach
we're
out
looking at the
the
same
16th at
time?
11.
16th.
At
Same
11.
time, at 11 o'clock, yep.
Okay.
So as of right now, the meeting will be here unless you notify us otherwise that you can get the room.
Okay.
And Dan, you have like 3.5 weeks to do all your advertising, that's no problem? Like, not no problem, but can be
Yeah,
done?
we get, actually, I'm just thinking, because if we wanted to run on the 2nd and the 9th, we need to get it published on the 20th. We need to submit to the paper tomorrow. So I don't know that we have the legal ad ready for the rates. If I was in the room, I'd probably be looking at Tracy and Sandy if they're...
Tracy's here.
Yeah, I don't know,
We definitely have the legal ad ready for the land taking, but you're right about the rates. I could see if Sandy might know.
because I was having a hard time finding this sheet the other day, so I might
The water
have
rates?
to recreate it. Yeah,
Okay.
the edits I made to it.
Sandy?
Yes, what?
Legal ad for water rates, we're gonna do the, land taking on the 16th of June. And we're thinking, might as well just do everything, the water rates, water and sewer rates and fees, and the land taking. But is the paperwork, the, notice, ready to go for water rates and fees?
We can get that ready, I think is Friday the
Tomorrow.
deadline? Yeah, tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can make that happen, as long as I know we have the materials, we can get it ready.
You know, the only thing we don't know, well, maybe we'll know by tomorrow, but in the ad, you probably have to put the room. Right, Dan?
Right.
do have the recording, and
Yeah, we need to put the
The
location,
location.
which is okay. I mean, if we get that, if we don't get it by the time we need to submit it, we could just default to the conference room.
I think we could find out after the meeting, right, Dan?
Yeah.
Whether
Oh, we should be able to
it's
find out today.
available, and
Yeah.
then just like,
Yeah.
we can get it on the ad if it's available, the Griffin Room.
Yeah.
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 We could always
We
do it
can
at
do
the
that, Dan, I
community
can work
center,
with
too.
you after the meeting to just
Okay.
tighten up everything that we're gonna do and need to advertise and,
All right,
okay?
all right,
Great.
sounds like the 16th is on. Okay, thank you, Sandy. All right, Dan, anything else for, water rates and fees,
Nope.
the land taking?
Good there?
Huh?
I'm good on the landscape? Did we do land? Yeah, we did landscape.
All right. Anything for the board? Good? All right, then, moving on. Sewer use regulations.
All right. So it was some time ago, I had a meeting with former town planner John Eidman and the health director Katie to discuss some of the language in the sewer use regs and try to clarify, because some of it was a little cumbersome and confusing. So I did highlight the big areas in question, which are kind of how flow for an individual property is determined, the relationship of the Board of Water Wastewater Commissioners, the Board of Health, and the Board of Selectmen, and to make it a little bit more, I guess, people-friendly. So if I can draw your attention to Article 2, Regulation of Sewer, under Section 1, that language there, let me see. All right, so this section was specific to determining the structure's existing flow. So I added,
Article 2, right there, Article 2, Section 1. Existing structures.
Yeah, so the
Page-
new language
page
that page 8.
Okay, Dan.
So I just included some additional language. I think it just helps better explain that the process by which the town will go through to determine a pre-existing structure's flow allocation. And the way that these were written, I think were really intended to explain how pre-existing non-conforming properties would be handled, right? So there's a 1 bedroom per 10,000 square foot bedroom restriction in East Harwich. So if you have a 40,000 square foot lot, you can have 4 bedrooms. Well, if you have that grandfathered house, 6-bedroom house on a 20,000 square foot lot, it didn't really clearly spell out how that property would be grandfathered that flow. So I input language that just states that we would use, evaluate the structure's use and the floor plan against the flow. In section 15203 of Title V regulations, there's a large group of tables that quantify the amount of flow allocation per bedroom or per seats in a restaurant or something to that. So what we're looking to do is basically say, we're going to look at your property as it was pre-existing, and we're going to determine the flow allocation based off these tables in Title V, instead of holding them to the bedroom count, because they're pre-existing.
Dan?
Lori?
Before you go on, because I'll lose it, so you're determining flow allocation, but, I mean, ultimately, won't the flow allocation be the actual flow?
Yes. Well, meaning well, for new construction or post-construction?
Well,
And that's,
I'm trying to decide, well, you were talking about the 6-bedroom grandfathered house, so that's not new construction.
right.
So,
Pre-existing.
right, so I'm trying to figure out why you wouldn't just get the actual flow, or why this would have to be conceived of in
So
advance.
think of it, here's a good example. So say that 6-bedroom house on the half-acre lot only had 1 person living in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Their water use would be basically nothing,
Right.
you know? Now, if we use prior water use, then they wouldn't be allotted the flow that they have by right under Title V. And the opposite could be true as well. Now, we could have a 2-bedroom house that's using 100,000 gallons of water a year, and that's all due to irrigation. However, when we talk about wastewater flow, they're only allowed 110 gallons per bedroom for that property, so they would only have a flow allotment of 220 gallons per day. Now, managing that at the granular level is something that I'm still parsing together. We have to tie it back to something, essentially.
All right, so you have this 6-bedroom with one person in it, and they're not using their allotment, but I don't have a problem with that. I mean, they're in a sewered area, we're gonna have their actual flow. I guess I'm just missing the need for this.
So now you go and sell that house, and we say this house is only allowed 110 gallons per day because that's what the flow was for the past, at 2016 when the snapshot was taken. They would be in violation if they, and it gets a little bit more, it makes a little bit more sense when we get to section 4, after rebuilding of fires, floods, and acts of nature. So that's where determining the structure's existing flow is most relevant, in my opinion. So if we can just jump to that and then jump back.
All right,
So-
but before you do that, I mean, what if somebody is allotted 100, gallons or whatever? I mean, what if they go over? What are you gonna do? I mean,
Yeah, so I've been
All right.
thinking about
you talk.
that. We don't have a way to meter outgoing flow from a
Right.
property, right? So it's ultimately going to have to be done on an aggregate. And what my thought process is on how to manage it is this. So each pump station has a finite number of parcels that contribute flow to it, right? I can do a couple of things with that information. I can take the totalized flow from a pump station and I can run that against the assessor's database for bedroom numbers in that given watershed area, right? And if there was a flow in excess of the allotment for a given area, we could start to campaign to do, low flow devices. We have to manage it at scale. We can't manage it on an individual parcel level because we don't have, the resources and the metering technology to do so. So it's going to have to be managed kind of on the aggregate, and as we know what our total flow allocation will be, I can use master meters from the pump stations to try to compare that against, and then if we're approaching a limit, we'd have to start to do those kind of water conservation measures.
So this probably wouldn't come into play until, a complete area around the pump station was done and connected. So, I mean, at least we're talking many years, 5+ years, right?
Or the condition in section 4, where, so this just speaks to the promise that the town made to the residents that said, any flow allocation you have as of July 1st, 2016, you will be grandfathered, and any construction after 2016 is going to have to adhere to the nitrogen 10,000 square foot per bedroom thing, right? So you have that
Okay.
6-bedroom house that we've been talking about, and it burns down.
Yeah.
You should be able to rebuild that 6-bedroom house on that half-acre lot by right because it was pre-existing. However, under these regulations, without that determination of fire flow, you would be limited to only 210 gallons or 220 gallons per day because you have that half-acre lot.
Okay. When you say it the simple way, I'm fine with it. It was all the legalese that throws me. When you say, 10,000, square feet per bedroom, X amount existing, you're gonna get the same, then I'm fine with it, so that's okay.
So when all's said and done, the couple that are living in the 6-bedroom house can sell it to another couple that have 5 kids. That's gonna fly, okay?
Correct.
Okay. I'm with you.
And I know I was trying to think of how to get, I wish I could just write it like we have the conversation, but
Yeah.
they don't like when you do things like that. But that's, and I maybe for the next meeting, because this is likely going to be a discussion over the course of time here, I can include in the packet those tables, because I think when you see the tables, it'll help tie it all together.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
But now, moving forward, if I can, under section 3 on page 8, the last sentence, for determining wastewater flow, any existing lot otherwise qualified may be permitted for that wastewater flow as determined by the Board of Health regulations in effect in 2016, whichever is less. So I added the language, parcels within a zone 2 for public water supply or other designated nitrogen-sensitive areas shall be limited to no more than 1 bedroom per 10,000 square foot of lot size, or as allowed under section 5, aggregate determinations of flow and nitrogen loadings. So this gets to a bigger discussion, I think, which is section 5. So I was going through these with Katie in the health department, and she thought it was appropriate that these be put in here because of how we're managing sewers in East Harwich. So under a typical sewer infrastructure project, after it's done, you know, the 10,000 square foot per bedroom stipulation would go away, right? Because that's really intended to limit the septic loading on the aquifer. But that septic loading is now being removed through the collection system. But in order to manage growth and maintain East Harwich as it was in 2016, one thing that was allowed back then and is still currently allowed under Title V is the possibility to basically buy land in the same watershed, deed it unbuildable, and use that square footage to supplement your primary residence with additional bedrooms. So they're basically buying another 10,000 square foot in the same sub-watershed to give themselves the ability to build another bedroom. This is something that's currently allowed. There's currently nitrogen aggregate agreements and deed restrictions in East Harwich presently. If we are going to maintain the condition of 10,000 square feet per bedroom, I think it's also appropriate to include this because those were tied hand in hand in Board of Health regulations, or Title V regulations rather, but that I would go back to the board for consideration.
Any comments from the board? All right, Dan.
And if you'd like more information on that, it's certainly something that Katie's a lot more familiar with than myself, so I would be happy to see if she could attend an upcoming meeting if you guys do have further questions on that.
Noreen?
Is this something that we should also be voting on June 16th to renew?
Unfortunately, we won't be able to, just because the way in which the IMA requires us to go back and forth with Chatham. So once we have completed draft regulations, we have to send those to Chatham for a period of time. They have to review, they can provide comment, and then from there we can go with the advertisement. So this would have to be sometime after.
So we won't be approving these new sewer regs for a while then?
No, just by, I don't know if statute's the right word, but just by language of the IMA, we can't.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I don't know if other people are interested, since we have time. Obviously, maybe we can have another discussion on this, or maybe we don't need it,
You know, I'd like to.
You'd like to? I would.
I'd like
think I
to
would.
read.
Yeah.
Because it does at times get complicated.
Yeah.
And especially where we're, you know, inter-municipal with Chatham, how do we stack up versus Chatham and stuff like that? Because, you know, you don't want to hear the hue and cry from Chatham saying, well, how come in Harwich they can do that? We can't do it here. So I think there's more to be discussed, but I think you need to have some time to digest and then sit down with this, only this, and have that discussion.
And I'll add,
And have the Board of Health there too.
I'll add to Alan's that since it's not just our vote, I mean, I think the last IMA change took, I don't know, a year, but, I mean,
Yeah,
since this is gonna ride, if we went with something like this for at least a couple of years, it seems like we should, or I should anyway, take a little more time with it.
Yeah, I
yeah.
think, well, we still have to have it come back from Chatham, and it depends on whatever they say,
Yep.
or whatever change they want to make too, so yeah, it's gonna take, you know, a little bit more time to get through it.
Have they already approved this, Chatham? No,
Now, these are the changes.
no, I haven't.
made.
right. But we wouldn't send it to Chatham till we were ready, right? So,
Right.
so we're not waiting for it to, yeah, okay.
I guess a couple other changes, just to highlight, the language for section, what was section 5, now section 6, if things go forward, just for how to apply for a variance. Any of the conditions within section 2 is just kind of clumsy language before, so we just tried to clean it up a little bit. And then further down, let me see it, I don't think that was it. Oh, okay, that was it.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, but this will have to go in front of the Board of Selectmen as well, won't it?
No, not at this point. And that's what I was actually looking for. So one of the things that I was contemplating change on was Article 12, the land use control document, component, which is the flow neutral bylaw.
Do you have a page?
Portion of the page 9 starts on 19, I think.
Article 9 or 19, Dan?
Page 19, Article 12.
Article 12, okay.
Yeah. So this, like a lot of the other language, I would say, is pretty confusing. However, after reading through it, thinking of ways to change it, it has become somewhat more clear to me as to the, I think, intent of how this is supposed to be structured. So we have the flow management on an individual property level, right, which is what we were just talking about up in section 2 with the pre-existing non-conforming or the vacant land that is going to be tied back to those charts in the Title V regulation. For the land use control component, this is really talking about governing flow at the 30,000 foot elevation, when we're talking from watershed to watershed. Now, there are conditions in the land use controls that can allow for flow to be moved from one area to another. So from East Harwich and Pleasant Bay, they could reallocate a portion of flow to Saquatucket or another area in town. Now, the conditions by which they can move flow are within the following pages here. So on my page 21, there are conditions for which the Board of Selectmen can reserve the right to reallocate flow. And there are conditions for which they need to do that. So I guess to Noreen's question about including, the Selectmen's input, I would feel that if we were proposing to amend anything within this section where it speaks to the relationship of flow and the Selectmen's authority, that should certainly be part of under their purview or consideration. But I think for all the other components, it's well within the Water Wastewater Commission's right to do so.
Noreen?
Dan, I'm glad you said that, because when the land use controls, which at the time quite a few years ago, was only just a little 3-page document, I was totally against allowing allocation in separate watersheds. I was a lone voice, but so be it. And I'm still gonna be against that. You know, I feel that if you're gonna reallocate, it should at least be in your own watershed, you know, maybe not your own neighborhood, but, you know, to allocate something in my neighborhood in Headwaters and say that that makes up for conservation land on the other side of the town, you know, I'm just never gonna agree with that.
Oh, well, it's not to, if I can, just not to, I guess, make up for something. This is a little bit different, I think, than like nitrogen trading per se.
Right.
In that, if we think Saquatucket Harbor, and I'm just going to pick on that for an example, right? So on point 1, it contains the sewer service areas. So Saquatucket Harbor has a total flow allocation of 113,000 gallons per day. Now that is almost where they're at today. So Saquatucket Harbor watershed is almost nearly built out. Now, if by chance, instead of, in a hypothetical situation, but instead of building the harbor master's building, they built a, you know, big 40-unit, 100-unit 40B, right? The water use and effluent generated from that facility would put the Saquatucket Harbor watershed in excess of its flow allocation, which is going to basically, and if so, it would push our total CWMP total flow up, which will put us in compromise for losing our 0% interest on the SRF loans because it's contingent upon that flow neutral growth. So, to account for that 100-unit 40B in Saquatucket Harbor, this regulation allows the selectmen to shift the, let's say, extra 26,000 gallons in Pleasant Bay that's in excess of our IMA with Chatham. They could shift that 326 from Pleasant Bay into Saquatucket Harbor. Now, by doing that, they would limit the ultimate build-out potential in flow in Pleasant Bay, but they would be able to stay within the total flow allocation of the 1.259 million gallons per day. So that's, it really, I think, ties all back to the 0% SRF eligibility by having these land use control documents in place.
Okay, so, and that's fine. When we were talking about this 5 years ago, the conversation now is way ahead of where it was then. You know, back then, we didn't talk a lot about nitrogen trading or any of those factors. So, you know, I'm happy to relook at the whole document with our newer language. I guess I'm still a little confused that, and obviously we need, you know, more discussions on this, but, you know, again, this was voted in whatever year it was, I'm gonna say 2018, by the Board of Selectmen as sewer commissioners. So, you know, I mean, there's so many blurred lines, but now it's part of a document to be voted by us. So, I mean, I'll just leave that there till I think about it more. But, you know, I don't ever want to be in a position where we're, you know, gradually taking over the Board of Selectmen's work or purview. So,
But we are.
well, we are in the existing, in the places where a sewer has been built,
Right.
but we're not anyplace else. So if we're talking about, you know, I don't know, it just,
It's that
It makes me feel funny.
planning versus policy.
Right.
And they're very close.
I know.
There's a lot of gray
Yeah.
area. So,
Yeah.
and I think we should weigh in, but I think.
Another thing to think about too
Yeah,
is kind of, I guess, and I think originally when we started talking about land use controls, when the discussion first hit the table, we were talking about doing it as a bylaw. And legal counsel, if I'm not mistaken, advised us at the time against making it a bylaw because any reallocation of flow would have required a town meeting authorization. And that could cause hiccups if there's a public health emergency or something like that. So instead of making it a bylaw, they decided to include it in sewer use regulations. Now, the one thing that I think is important is that the Board of Selectmen, I guess through general government oversight, could reallocate flow due to a zoning change that occurred, you know, in the ranks beneath them, right? Whereas or if they're trying to develop a Harwich Center, or, that they can kind of steer the direction of the town in their capacity as selectmen. And I think that requires them to have the authority to shift things within sewer service areas, subject that it doesn't impact upon our nitrogen mitigation goals.
I'll just say that part of my hesitancy, and it will, I'm sure, start to go away with further reading and discussion, but if there was talk about bylaw and things like that, then it was done not in public meetings.
I agree.
2018. I'm not saying anything bad, like that there were meetings without quorums. I'm just saying that I was at every single meeting about everything, and I never heard that discussion. And also, I never heard discussion that land use controls were going to become part of the actual sewer regulations. At the time, they were separate documents. And the only discussion that I remember publicly was being told by CDM Smith that if we didn't do it right away, we were going to lose our SRF. It was like, that was said about everything. And, that's when I spoke against it. It was voted anyway, and it had very little interest, quite honestly, at the time. So, I'll just leave it there. I'm just a little uncomfortable with it, but I'm sure as I get more familiar, that might help a little.
And I thought that they were going to revisit the local ordinances, the zoning, and make it, and revisit bylaws. That was my understanding.
Dan?
Well, so this land use control document was snuck. I don't want to use the term snuck, but it was put in in the 11th hour, and if I'm not mistaken, it was put in and adopted by the board of selectmen in between the time that we opened the bids and I think construction started, because CDM realized that we needed to get this done to get the 0% interest on the SRF loan. When my recollection is at the time the selectmen adopted this, we, as the town of Harwich, did not yet have sewer use regulations. I think we technically were supposed to, because the IMA said, that Harwich shall develop regulations, but at the time that this document came to the town, we hadn't adopted formal regulations yet. I think after that time, and it may have been internal discussions, I think this is when, Chris was here, about whether or not this should be a bylaw or shouldn't be, or if it should just be a standalone document. And because we didn't have regulations, there was some confusion around it. At least just trying to contextualize my, side of it, I guess. So, but I can certainly dig into this some more too and talk to legal about, get some clarification on who needs to be involved, who should be involved. If we're amending our regulations but not touching this component, can we just, act autonomously, or if, so I can try to get some more information on that too.
And I think part of the whole group that was recently put together, I don't know if it's been finalized yet, the visioning group that's writing the next
The LCP?
plan, yes. Aren't they also somehow influential in this?
Yeah, so say the local comprehensive plan group that's being put together now, it's garnered all their public input, and the public says, we want to develop, I'll just pick on Saquatucket Harbor again. We want to build some stuff here, and we want to do this, and in order to do that, we need to enact these zoning changes. By doing that, the zoning would allow for more flow, and in order to accommodate the goals of the local planning comprehensive plan, the selectmen would have to reallocate flow to accommodate their direction. So they're planning basically, any planning or zoning change would ultimately come before the selectmen. If it goes through, then the selectmen would reallocate flow to accommodate that growth. So yes, to your point, they're depending on the output of that group and what they're laying out for the town, it would be a good opportunity for the town, select, all of us to look at how the sewer service flows in the land use control document align with the comprehensive plan that's being updated.
Is anybody from the commission on that? Have they chosen it yet?
They have.
Yeah, I know they just approved a couple more people. I don't know if they're going to be moving forward or in a holding pattern, because whether replacing John or what the plan is.
I think they said it was gonna be a little bit of a holding pattern.
That makes sense, right?
All right, Dan, anything else for the,
Yeah, no, that's all for me on that one.
okay. All right, next we have superintendent's report.
I guess a small announcement, but pretty big. We are, crossing my fingers, we are pretty much ported over to the new Elements work order software after probably over a year of ongoing efforts by all involved. So we started the port over to go live last week, and I think we're just working on a few refinements, but we're pretty much there.
All right.
That's all for me for today, I believe.
All right, commissioners report. Alan?
No, good.
Judith? Maureen?
Fine.
John?
Nope.
All right, we have our next meeting for the 16th at 11 o'clock. Location will be determined as of by the end of today or tomorrow. And we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Have a nice long weekend.
Yeah, weekend.